Hey creative fashionistas, Amber from Sustainable Jungle here, where we share sustainability tips, tricks, hacks, products, brands, and stories to better our planet. And here at SJ, we love to see the creation of upcycled fashion brands embracing closet circularity and fighting back against the staggering 92 million tons of textile waste the fashion industry generates annually. But putting a stop to textile waste doesn't just mean buying sustainable new or new to you. Contrary to fast fashion's cheap throwaway model, upcycled fashion is a deliberate approach that values existing resources and resourcefulness, proving that with just a little bit of effort, the life of clothing can be multiplied manifold. Not to mention, upcycling offers a cost-effective means of revamping one's wardrobe. Instead of investing in new clothing items, one can rejuvenate something that already exists for just a fraction of the cost. So by learning some simple tips and techniques, upcycling clothes and DIY style means that you can breathe new life into garments that you already own at a low cost to both you and the environment. With our easy-to-follow tips, you can take your wardrobe from out-of-date to on-trend faster than you can say circular economy. Now, before you dive into the world of upcycling, you're going to want to make sure that you have the proper tools, but don't make the mistake of thinking that they need to be anything extravagant or expensive. A basic sewing machine, or even just a handheld sewing machine like this one, is often enough to expedite and streamline your sewing process, but if you don't mind spending a little extra time doing things by hand, even they're not necessary. In fact, I rarely ever use my handheld sewing machine. Transforming wardrobes through upcycling doesn't require complex or advanced skills whatsoever. In fact, a simple pair of scissors is often all that you need. But here are some of the most basic and fundamental supplies that you'll likely need if you're going to really get into repurposing and upcycling clothes. So first you need a basic sewing kit, which is basically going to consist with some needles, thread of different colors, embroidery floss if you want to do anything that's a little bit more chunky and thicker. You'll also want a pair of sharp scissors, great for cutting fabric, and I also like to keep a pair of embroidery scissors on hand for cutting thread. Embroidery scissors are much sharper than regular scissors, so they're going to make sure that the ends of your thread don't fray, which makes threading a needle so much easier. I like to keep a ruler on hand for measuring out things on fabric, as well as a soft fabric ruler if I'm going to do anything sort of sizing-wise. Heat erasable pens are excellent for marking up what you need to cut or sew on your fabric. A seam ripper, because we all make mistakes, even experts. Some pins and a pin cushion. These are great because you're going to need to be pinning some of your edges a lot of the times, and I really recommend these old school tomato pin cushions because this little guy here is actually filled with really coarse sand, so you can keep all of your needles sharp and in good condition for a lot longer. I like to also keep some fabric glue on hand and an embroidery hoop in case I'm doing any embroidery on fabric. This helps keep your fabric under tension. And for also embroidery, I also like to keep some silky, dissolvable fabric paper on there. So basically you can either print or draw designs on this, stick it on your fabric, and then wash it away in warm water and it completely dissolves, leaving just what you've sewn or embroidered on top of it. And then while it's not always necessary, it's never a bad idea to keep an assortment of fabric scraps and hardware like spare buttons or zippers and embellishments like lace on hand too. You never know when you're going to need them or find a nice spot to add them to a garment. But rather than purchasing these items new, consider how you can repurpose them either from things that you've upcycled in the past or maybe scored from your local thrift store. The craft stores and local thrift stores are filled with all sorts of random little secondhand embellishments that you can often score in bulk quantities on the cheap. Or you can just do as we do and get in the habit of saving these little odds and ends whenever you can. Did your blouse come with some new spare buttons? Put them in a jar in case you need them later, either for that blouse or another project. Once you're ready to go, start with some no-sew upcycling. While we do highly recommend learning some simple sewing methods to accomplish some of the most basic and common fabric repairs, revitalizing your wardrobe does not actually always require sewing. There are tons of no-sew techniques out there that offer simple solutions to breathe new life into upcycled clothing. You could do things like using fabric glue to add little embellishments like rhinestones or maybe some scraps of lace. There's always iron-on patches, which can add a little bit of flair to an old pair of jeans. There's always DIY options, so if you have stained and tired clothing that's maybe quite faded, add a little bit of new color to it, and you can even make your dyes eco-friendly by making them yourself. For instance, you can use onion skins and boil your fabric with onion skins. That'll give it a nice earthy light dye. You can use things like turmeric, but be careful if you're using turmeric because it will dye everything, including that which you might not want it to dye, so just be very cautious with that. And then of course there's also just cutting things. So for instance, if you have an old sweatshirt that maybe is a little tired and grandma got it for you on vacation or something, crop off the bottom and suddenly you have a little bit more of a cute, trendy loungewear piece that you can wear around the house or when you're out running errands. Our next tip for upcycling is to choose items that are suitable for it to begin with. When you start to upcycle old clothing, it's best to select some more simple items that are less complex to transform. And that includes the fabrics as well. So fabrics like cotton, flannel, and denim are top choices because they're easy to handle compared to more intricate or stretchy materials like chiffon and synthetic fabrics. So that means that cotton t-shirts, sweatshirts, dresses with simple silhouettes, and old jeans are really good starting points. And keep in mind that early attempts might not be all that flawless, but they do reflect progress. If you're worried about ruining your own clothes, especially if you have some sentimental attachment that's driving you to actually upcycle them and keep them around in the first place, start by experimenting and trying to upcycle thrift store clothing. Grab items that are on the deepest discount rack because that usually means that they've been in the store the longest and they're probably going to be soon discarded or sent away to overseas textile recyclers, so that way you're not wasting anything. Next, try some alterations to form. Once you start feeling confident with the basics, let your creativity flow, or sew, by trying some functional alterations to things. That includes like hemming and cropping. These are relatively easy ways to give garments just a little facelift that they need. For instance, you probably have some old jeans on hand that maybe are too short for you now, or they're really worn at the bottom from dragging into your shoes, maybe they have big holes in the knees. Crop off the legs and you get a trendy pair of denim shorts. The great thing about jeans too is you don't have to add any hem tape or a sew at the hemline to stop that fraying because people actually like the fraying look. You can even modify old wedding dresses, which are typically a one-time wear, into unique pieces like adorned denim or a trendy corset top, and you can even dye them for a complete color change. The options are quite literally endless, and if you don't believe us, a quick search on Pinterest will provide a never-ending feed teeming with upcycling inspiration. And finally, go beyond upcycling just clothing. Just because upcycling is our favorite answer for what to do with old clothes doesn't mean you can only make clothing using it. When you start to view clothes as just another textile, new upcycling opportunities arrive. For instance, maybe you have a bunch of old t-shirts that have sentimental value from high school sports teams or camps you went to. You're never gonna wear them again, but you don't necessarily want to throw them away. You can cut out the graphics and turn them into a memory quilt that you can cherish for the rest of your life. If you have old t-shirts, you can turn them into tote bags, so you can just cut off the sleeves, cut a little V in the neck if there's not already one there, and then cut fringes in the bottom, tie them together, and flip it inside out, and then you have a nice little reusable shopping bag or a storage bag for around the house. And then of course there's all sorts of small utilities that you can use fabric scraps for, like zero-waste gift wrapping, handkerchiefs, scrunchies, and cleaning rags. I like to use softer t-shirts and use those as mirror and glass cleaners, and then more durable fabrics like sweatshirt and denim for where I need to scrub. And you can also take more sturdy materials like denim and canvas and use them to create eco-friendly dog toys, but just be mindful that dog toys do often get ingested, so you are going to want to make sure that those are going to be natural and safe fabrics before you pursue that avenue. Those are all the tips that we have for you today, but now we want to know what your favorite ways to upcycle clothing are. Drop us your tips and project ideas in the comments below, as we're always looking for ways to DIY new duds. And remember, refreshing old garments and keeping them in your worn wardrobe for as long as possible is the single biggest thing we can do to curb the impacts of fast fashion and support a slower fashion mindset overall. And as you can see, it's so easy to do. Sewing not even required. So be sure to share this video with both your crafty and non-crafty fashion-loving friends. And if you want to help us reach more people, be sure to give us a thumbs up as well. And don't forget to hit the sub button for more sustainable-minded tips and tutorials from us, and have a fabulously crafty day, everyone.